The job posting had been too good to be true, and Cashin Thorne should have known better. 30,000 credits for a simple cargo run from the Nexus station to the Outer Rim territories. No questions asked, no manifest inspection required. In his 15 years of running freight through contested space, he'd learned that the jobs with the biggest payouts usually came with the biggest problems. The Stellar Phoenix drifted in the shadow of Nexus Station's massive cargo bays. Her hull, scarred from countless jumps through hyperspace and more than a few encounters with pirates. She wasn't much to look at a modified Hermes class transport with reinforced armor and an oversized engine core, but she was fast, reliable, and most importantly, she was his. Cashin stood in the cargo bay, watching as the loading crew sealed the final container. The mysterious client had insisted on personally overseeing the transfer, arriving in an unmarked shuttle with corporate security escorts. The woman who emerged wore an expensive suit that screamed upper management, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her cold gray eyes. "Captain Thorne," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Vera Cross, Meridian Dynamics. I trust you've reviewed the contract terms? Simple transport, no deviations, payment on delivery." Cashin accepted her handshake, noting the firm grip and the slight tremor that suggested stimulant use. "Though I have to say, Miss Cross, for a routine cargo run, your security seems a bit excessive." Vera's smile was sharp as a blade. "The contents are delicate, industrial prototypes worth more than your ship. I'm sure you understand the need for discretion." Cashin nodded, though something in her tone made his instincts prickle. The container they'd loaded was unlike anything he'd seen, a sleek black rectangle about the size of a small room, humming with barely audible energy signatures. No viewports, no obvious access panels, just smooth obsidian surfaces marked with warning symbols he didn't recognize. "The container's environmental systems are autonomous," Vera continued, producing a datapad. "Under no circumstances should you attempt to access the interior. Your job is simply to deliver it intact to the coordinates provided." After Vera and her escorts departed, Cashin ran through the pre-flight checklist with practiced efficiency. The Phoenix lifted off from Nexus Station with her usual grace, transitioning smoothly into hyperspace as they began their journey to the Outer Rim. It should have been a routine 3-day run through mostly empty space. The first sign of trouble came 18 hours into the journey. Cashin was in the cockpit, reviewing navigation charts, when the ship's AI chimed softly. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations from the cargo bay." "Define unusual," Cashin said, already moving toward the rear of the ship. "The container's internal power systems appear to be fluctuating. Additionally, I'm registering faint biosignatures from within." Cashin stopped dead. "Biosignatures? That's supposed to be industrial equipment." As he approached the cargo bay, he could hear it, a soft, rhythmic sound that made his blood run cold. Breathing. Someone was inside that container, and from the irregular pattern, they were in distress. The ethical implications hit him like a physical blow. Meridian Dynamics hadn't hired him to transport prototypes. They'd hired him to transport a person. And given the level of security, the secrecy, and the specialized container, it wasn't a willing passenger. Cashin's hands hovered over the container's control panel. Every instinct screamed at him to open it, but breaking the seal would void his contract and potentially put him at odds with one of the most powerful corporations in known space. 30,000 credits could keep the Phoenix running for months, pay off his outstanding debts, maybe even fund some much-needed upgrades. The breathing from inside grew more labored. "Damn," he muttered, and began working on the access codes. The container opened with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure, revealing an interior that made Cashin's stomach turn. The space was barely large enough for a person to lie down, lined with what appeared to be medical equipment and restraint systems. Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow. And there, suspended in the center by chains of pure energy, was a woman. She was unconscious, her dark hair matted with sweat, wearing a simple gray jumpsuit that bore the unmistakable marks of long confinement. The energy restraints wrapped around her wrists and ankles like living things, pulsing with a soft blue light that seemed to cause her pain even in unconsciousness. Her face, though pale and drawn, was strikingly beautiful high cheekbones, full lips, and skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. But it was her eyes that captured him when they suddenly snapped open. Deep violet, like the heart of a nebula, and filled with a pain so profound it took his breath away. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Help me." The ship's alarm chose that moment to blare, and Cashin's heart sank as he recognized the signature. Pirates' 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace directly ahead of them, already charging weapons. "Captain," the AI announced with mechanical calm, "we're being hailed by vessels identifying themselves as the Crimson Fleet. They're demanding we prepare to be boarded." Cashin looked from the tactical display to the woman in the container. The pirates had probably been tracking them since they left Nexus Station, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Standard procedure would be to comply, let them take the cargo, and hope they left him alive. But looking at the woman's terrified face, he knew he couldn't do that. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Nix," she whispered. "NYX, I'm Cashin. I'm going to get you out of here, but I need you to stay calm. Can you do that?" She nodded weakly, and something passed between them in that moment, a connection he couldn't explain, as if their minds had briefly touched. The pirates opened fire, just as Cashin sealed the container and sprinted for the cockpit. The Phoenix shuddered under the assault, her shields flaring as energy beams lanced through space. Cashin threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. That's when it happened. A pulse of energy erupted from the cargo bay, washing through the ship like a wave of liquid starlight. The attacking pirates suddenly broke off their assault, their ships veering away as if controlled by invisible hands. Through the viewports, Cashin could see their hulls buckling, their weapon systems shorting out in cascades of sparks. When the energy pulse faded, the 3 pirate vessels were drifting dead in space. Cashin stared in shock, then rushed back to the cargo bay. The container was open, the energy restraints flickering weakly. Mix stood in the center of the space, her violet eyes blazing with residual power, but she was swaying on her feet. "I'm sorry," she gasped, collapsing to her knees. "I didn't mean to. I couldn't control it." Cashin caught her as she fell, feeling the warmth of her skin, the rapid beating of her heart. Whatever she was, whatever had been done to her, she had just saved both their lives. "It's all right," he said, lifting her gently. "You're safe now." As he carried her toward the ship's small medical bay, Nix looked up at him with those impossible eyes. "You freed me," she whispered. "Why?" Cashin met her gaze and saw something there that called to him, a loneliness that matched his own, a pain that begged for healing. "Because everyone deserves to be free." The Phoenix continued on her course through the emptiness between stars, carrying 2 souls who had found something unexpected in the darkness: hope. The luxury transport Stellar Grace docked at Horizons, edged with none of the usual fanfare that accompanied diplomatic vessels. Baroness Thalia Vex had insisted on discretion. Her mission was too urgent for the delays that formal protocols would impose. Standing at the viewport of her private cabin, Thalia pressed her palm against the transparent aluminum and closed her eyes. The bond that connected her to Kess pulsed weakly but steadily somewhere within the sprawling station. Her companion was alive, but the pain she felt echoing through their link made her claws extend involuntarily. "Your Grace," came a soft voice behind her. "We've received docking clearance. Captain Joran requests an immediate audience. Thalia turned to face Riven, her most trusted aide, one of the few Aetherians she could count as truly loyal. His silver blue fur was immaculately groomed despite the long journey, and his golden eyes held the concern he dared not voice openly. "How long since you felt Kessa's presence?" he asked quietly. 6 days, Thalia replied, her musical voice tight with worry. "The bond has never been severed this long. If not for these faint echoes, I would fear the worst. The Aetherian bond between nobility and their companions was sacred, formed in infancy and lasting until death. Kess had been her constant companion for 15 years, since she was barely old enough to walk. The connection between them was more than telepathic. It was spiritual, emotional, fundamental to her very identity. The advanced team detected traces 3 days ago, Riven reminded her. Companion blood in the lower levels. Someone on this station knows something. Thalia straightened, drawing on the regal composure that had been drilled into her since childhood. Despite being only 28, she had ruled the Aetherian Consortium for 2 years, ever since her mother's assassination. Every day brought new challenges to her authority, new attempts to undermine her rule by those who saw her youth as weakness. The disappearance of Kess wasn't random. Someone had taken her companion to wound her, to destabilize her emotionally and politically. Without Kess, she felt incomplete, vulnerable in ways that went beyond the physical. "Prepare my formal robes," she decided, "but keep our true purpose hidden. We're conducting a routine inspection of trade regulations, nothing more." Captain Joran proved to be a thin, nervous human with shifting eyes and too many questions. He met them at the airlock with a handful of section supervisors, all trying too hard to appear professional. "Your Grace honors us with your presence," Joran said, his bow technically correct, but lacking genuine respect. "Though, I must admit, Horizon's Edge rarely warrants attention from the Consortium. We're a simple trading post." "Simplicity can hide many complexities, Captain," Thalia replied, smoothly. Her enhanced hearing picked up elevated heart rates from several of the humans' fear or guilt, possibly both. "I trust your records are in order?" "Of course, Your Grace, though perhaps we could begin with a tour of our main facilities." "The cargo. Processing centers, merchant quarters." "I'm particularly interested in your medical facilities," Thalia interrupted, watching their reactions carefully. "The Consortium has concerns about proper treatment of exotic species passing through border stations." A flicker of something recognition? Alarm crossed Joran's features before he could suppress it. "Certainly, Your Grace, though our medical bay is quite basic. We rely mostly on automated systems for non-human patients." As they moved through the station's corridors, Thalia felt the bond with Kess growing stronger. Her companion was here, somewhere in the lower levels where the official tour wouldn't venture. She needed to find a way to search freely without alerting potential enemies to her true purpose. The medical bay proved to be exactly as advertised: basic, automated, clearly. Inadequate for treating anything more complex than routine injuries. But Thalia's enhanced senses detected something else. The lingering scent of Aetherian blood, faint but unmistakable. "Captain," she said casually, "your records indicate several unauthorized life form readings in recent days. Perhaps your sensors need recalibration?" Joran's pulse spiked noticeably. "Unauthorized readings? I'm not aware of any. That is, we have many traders passing through with exotic pets. Perhaps some weren't properly registered. Perhaps." Thalia's golden eyes fixed. On his face, "I'd like to review those sensor logs personally, and interview any staff who might have encountered unusual specimens." "Of course, Your Grace, though most of our personnel are currently off duty. But we do have a civilian contractor who handles animal care rehabilitator who works in the lower levels. Perhaps she could provide insight into any unusual creatures." Thalia's hearts raced Etherin's head too, and both were suddenly pounding with hope and anticipation. This rehabilitator, what is her name? Zara Mitchell, Joran replied. Human. Female. Been here about 3 years. Keeps mostly to herself. Takes care of abandoned animals. Harmless enough, though she has access to areas most civilians don't. Zara Mitchell. Thalia committed the name to memory, along with the captain's. Obvious discomfort when discussing her. Either this woman was involved in Kess's disappearance, or she was being used as a scapegoat by those who were. I would very much like to meet Miss Mitchell, Thalia said. Privately, if possible. Perhaps she could show me her facilities? I? Well, Your Grace, she operates somewhat outside official channels. Her workspace isn't exactly suited for diplomatic visits. Captain Joran. Thalia's voice carried the subtle harmonics that marked Etherin authority. I didn't ask about the suitability of her facilities. I asked to meet her. The human captain swallowed hard. Of course, Your Grace. I'll have her. Contacted immediately. As Joran hurried away to make arrangements, Riven moved closer to Thalia's side. You sense something, he observed quietly. The bond is strongest when he mentioned the lower levels, Thalia confirmed. And this Zara Mitchell, there was something in his reaction. He's hiding something, but I don't think he's our enemy. He's afraid, but not guilty. Could she be the one who took Kess? Thalia considered this, reaching out with her enhanced senses, to probe the emotional resonances around them. No, she said finally. If she had harmed Kess, I would feel it through our bond. But she knows something. She may even be protecting him. The thought sent an unexpected surge of gratitude through her chest. If this human woman had found Kess injured and was caring for him, then Thalia owed her a debt beyond calculation. Your Grace, Joran returned, slightly out of breath. Ms. Mitchell will meet you in Conference Room C in 1 hour. She seemed quite nervous about a diplomatic meeting. Understandable, Thalia replied. Please ensure we have complete privacy. No recording devices, no observers. This is to be a confidential consultation about animal welfare standards. As they waited in the small conference room, Thalia found herself pacing despite her attempts at royal composure. The bond with Kess was so strong now that she could almost sense his presence directly below them. Her companion was alive, probably, healing and very likely in the care of this mysterious rehabilitator. The door chimed, and Thalia turned as a young human woman entered nervously. Zara Mitchell was smaller than she'd expected, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and intelligent. Brown eyes that immediately fixed on Thalia's face with undisguised fascination. But it was the scent that stopped Thalia's breath. Entirely. This woman carried traces of Kess's unique biochemical signature, not just blood, but the deeper markers that meant extended, intimate contact. She had been caring for him, holding him, comforting him. Your Grace, Zara said, her voice slightly breathless as she attempted an awkward bow. I'm honored to meet you, though I'm not sure why you'd want to speak with someone like me. Thalia studied the human woman carefully. There was no deception in her manner, no guilt or malice, only nervousness and something else of warmth in her eyes when she looked at Thalia that sent unexpected shivers down the Baroness's spine. Ms. Mitchell, Thalia said softly, I believe you have something that belongs to me. The Helix Nebula stretched before them like a cosmic flower, its petals of ionized gas glowing in brilliant shades of blue and gold. Hidden within its swirling depths was Sanctuary Station, a haven for rebels, smugglers, and anyone else who had reason to avoid corporate attention. The Phoenix limped through the outer gas clouds, her engines running dangerously hot after their desperate flight from Meridian's pursuit fleet. Hull temperature is approaching critical, Darius reported from his station, sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's climate control. We need to shut down for repairs, or we're going to cook ourselves from the inside out. Cashin nodded grimly, his hand steady on the controls as he navigated through the nebula's treacherous currents. There's a maintenance dock on the stations. Lower levels. Elena should be able to... The ship shuddered violently as something slammed into their porthole. Warning lights bathed the cockpit in angry red as the Phoenix was caught in a powerful tractor beam. "Well, well," came a gravelly voice over the comm system. "Cashin Thorne, you've got some nerve showing your face in my territory." A sleek gunship materialized out of the nebula's glow, its hull scarred by countless battles. Painted on its side was the symbol that made Cashin's blood turn to ice. Crimson skull surrounded by crossed plasma cannons. Marcus Webb, bounty hunter extraordinaire, and the last person Cashin wanted to encounter with Nix aboard. "Marcus," Cashin said into the comm, trying to keep his voice level. "This is a surprise. Not as much of a surprise as the bounty that just got posted on your head. 5 million credits, dead or alive. Though the lady you're carrying is worth considerably more if delivered intact." Marcus's laugh was like grinding metal. Meridian Dynamics has been very generous with their incentives. Nix stepped up beside Cashin, her face pale but determined. "How many ships?" "Just the one, but Marcus is ... persistent." Cashin studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. Webb's ship was faster and better armed than the Phoenix, but in the nebula's interference, they might have a chance if the decision was taken out of his hands, as the tractor beam yanked them toward an ancient asteroid that had been converted into a makeshift docking facility. Crude metal structures jutted from the rock's surface, like mechanical parasites, connected by a maze of sealed tunnels and pressurized chambers. "Don't try anything heroic, Thorne." Webb's voice crackled through the static. "I've got enough firepower to turn you into cosmic dust that the client prefers." Their package undamaged. As the Phoenix was drawn into the asteroid's docking bay, Cashin caught sight of movement in the shadows. More ships, more bounty hunters. Webb hadn't come alone. 6 vessels total, Darius reported quietly. "All armed, all pointed at us." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic clang that seemed to echo through the ship like a death knell. Within moments, armed figures in environmental suits were surrounding the Phoenix, their weapons trained on every exit. Cashin looked at Nix, seeing the fear in her violet eyes, but also something else, a growing determination that made the air around her shimmer with barely contained energy. "Nix, whatever you're thinking, don't. There are too many of them, and if you lose control, I won't let them take me back," she said quietly. "I can't." The main airlock hissed open, and Marcus Webb strode aboard like he owned the ship. He was a big man, enhanced with military-grade cybernetics that made him more machine than human. His left eye was a glowing red sensor, and his right arm had been replaced with a weapon knot that currently held a plasma cannon. "Marcus," Cashin said, stepping protectively in front of Nix, "you look ... different. Occupational hazards." Webb's synthetic eye whirred as it focused on Nix. "So this is the famous Project Phoenix. She's prettier than the files suggested. She has a name. She has a price." Webb gestured, and more bounty hunters filed into the ship, their weapons at the ready. 5 billion credits for live delivery. To Meridian Dynamics. Even split 6 ways, that's enough to retire on. That's when Cashin noticed her, woman in dark clothing who had entered with the bounty hunters, but seemed somehow separate from them. She was older, perhaps 50, with graying hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. There was something familiar about her, something that nagged at the edges of his memory. The woman caught his gaze and gave an almost imperceptible nod toward a service hatch near the engine room. A way out or a trap? "Before we hand over the merchandise," Webb continued, "I'm curious about something." The client mentioned that NX7 here has some rather unique abilities. Mind giving us a demonstration? Nix's glow began to intensify, her power responding to her fear and anger. The temperature in the cargo bay dropped noticeably, and several of the bounty hunters shifted nervously. That's far enough. Webb raised his weapon, the plasma cannon charging with a high-pitched whine. I said a demonstration, not a light show. Control yourself, or your friend here gets to find out what a plasma bolt does to human tissue. The threat worked. Nix's glow dimmed, though Cashin could feel the energy still coursing through her, barely held in check. Through their growing connection, he sensed her internal struggle, the desire to fight warring with the need to protect him. That's when the mysterious woman made her move. "Webb," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You always were an idiot." The bounty hunter turned toward her, his synthetic eye whirring in confusion. "Zara, what are you?" "What I'm doing," Zara Blackwood said as she drew a weapon of her own, "is evening the odds." The firefight that followed was brief but brutal. Zara's weapon wasn't a conventional plasma rifle. It was something Cashin had never seen before, firing bolts of coherent energy that passed through armor like it was paper. 2 of Webb's men went down before they could react. "The hatch!" Zara shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "Now!" Cashin grabbed Nix's hand and dove for the service tunnel. Darius closed behind them. As they tumbled through the narrow passage, he heard Webb roaring commands and the whine of plasma weapons. Whatever Zara was up to, she had bought them precious. Seconds dot, they emerged in the asteroid's maintenance tunnels, a maze of pipes and conduits that ran throughout the facility. Emergency lighting cast everything in a hellish red glow, and the air was thick with the smell of recycled oxygen and machine oil. "This way," came a voice from the shadows. Zara appeared from a side passage, moving with the fluid grace of a professional. "I know a way to Elena's command center, but we have to move fast. Webb will have those tunnels flooded with hunters in minutes." "Why are you helping us?" Cashin asked as they ran through the narrow corridors. "Because I know who she is," Zara replied, glancing back at Nix. "And more importantly, I know what Meridian did to her." They reached a maintenance shaft that led upward through the asteroid's core. As they climbed, Zara continued speaking, her words coming in breathless bursts. Project Phoenix wasn't just about creating psychic weapons. It was about consciousness transfer, uploading human minds into energy constructs. Nix was the prototype, but she wasn't the only one. Cashin felt Nix's grip on his hand tighten. "There are others." "We're others," Zara corrected grimly. 12 test subjects in total. Nix is the only survivor. They emerged into what appeared to be an observation deck, its transparent steel windows offering a view of the nebula beyond. But Cashin's attention was focused on the woman waiting for them, Elena Reese, leader of the rebel coalition and one of the few people in the galaxy who had successfully defied corporate power. She was younger than he'd expected, perhaps 35, with short-cropped auburn hair and scars that spoke of hard-won battles. Her eyes were the green of deep space, and they were currently fixed on Nix with an expression of profound sympathy. "Hello, Seven," Elena said softly. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." Nix stiffened. "You know what they called me." "I know a lot of things, including the fact that your friend Orion isn't dead, and he isn't working for Meridian by choice." Elena gestured to a nearby chair. "Sit, please. You've been through enough." As Nix sank into the chair, her exhaustion finally showing, Elena turned to Cashin. "You've made some powerful enemies, Captain. Admiral Cross has dispatched a full battle group to retrieve her property. They'll be here within hours." "She's not property," Cashin said firmly. "No, she's not. She's something much more dangerous. She's hope." Elena moved to a control console, an activated holographic display. For 10 years, Meridian has been perfecting the consciousness transfer technology, not for medical purposes, but for immortality. They want to upload the minds of their corporate elite into bodies like hers, giving them both eternal life and godlike power. The implications hit Cashin like a physical blow. They're planning to transfer their consciousness into enhanced bodies. Exactly. And Nyx is the proof of concept, the demonstration that the process can work without destroying the original personality. Alana's expression darkened. But there's something they don't know, something that makes her far more valuable than they realize. She activated another display, showing brain scan patterns that made Cashin's head spin. Nyx isn't just a successful transfer. She's something new entirely. The process didn't just preserve her consciousness, it evolved it. She's becoming something beyond human, beyond their ability to control. As if summoned by those words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. On the tactical display, Cashin could see them dozens of ships dropping out of hyperspace at the nebula's edge. Meridian had found them. Elena, Nyx said, rising from her chair with visible effort, there's something you need to know. The connection between Cashin and me, it's not just psychic. During the consciousness transfer, part of my original self fragmented. Those fragments have been seeking compatible minds, trying to rebuild what was lost. She turned to Cashin, her violet eyes bright with tears. When I touched your mind, those fragments found their home. We're linked now, truly linked. If they take me, they'll have access to your memories, your thoughts, everything that makes you who you are. The weight of that revelation settled over him like a shroud. He was no longer just trying to save a woman, he was fallen in love with her. Was trying to prevent a corporation from gaining access to every secret he'd ever known, every person he'd ever cared about. Then we make sure they don't take you, he said simply. Outside the station, Admiral Cross's fleet began its approach, weapons charging for what would surely be the final battle. But in that moment, surrounded by allies and facing impossible odds, Cashin Thorne realized something that changed everything. He was no longer afraid to lose. He was only afraid of not fighting hard enough to win. The battle for Sanctuary Station was about to begin, and with it, the war that would determine not just their fate, but the future of human consciousness itself. As the first enemy ships entered the nebula, Nyx's hand found his, and through their connection, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The real fight was just beginning.